Maybe it's supposed to be 1, but good morning, good afternoon. No, good morning. Welcome to the Senate Energy and Environment Committee. Today's date is the 24th. It is 11:33. We have a lot to cover, but I do want to mention we have 2 members that are absent today. We have Senator Finley and Senator Hayden are not able to join us today, and let us know. And so we have quite a packed agenda. So we're going to go ahead and get us opened up with an update on the Oregon Producer Responsibility Program plan. Is that correct? Oh, you're like, I thought you were doing something. So I'm going to invite speakers up to come. There's Abby Baduras, Arian Sperry, I'm not saying that right, Kim Holmes. And what we'd like to do is, they had this presentation yesterday, and Senator Golden and I were sitting at the House side listening to some of their presentations. So
just talk to me.
This is just for her right here.
I have short-term memory issues.
Okay, so talk to them.
You know, an adult learner has to hear things 7 times before we actually stick. So we'll see.
So
we'll see
be
you
here
6
all
more
night.
times.
So anyway, we are going to get started about giving us an update and providing us where you think there's been some buzz about this bill and the implementation plan. So I think this will be very exciting to hear where folks feel that they are at and how we think things are progressing. So please take it away.
Well, thank you, Senator Lieber, I'm speaking to
You're welcome.
today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Chair Solomon and members of the committee, Senator Golden. I'm Abby Baduras. I'm the legislative analyst for the Land Quality Division at the Department of Environmental Quality. I'm here with Arian Sperry, also from DEQ, to update you on the implementation of the Plastic Pollution and Recycling Modernization Act that was created by SB 582 in 2021. And I think this is the 8th time I've probably been in front of you all on this, maybe more. So hopefully it's starting to stick. I'm pleased actually to be here with Kim Holmes from the Prospective Producer Responsibility Organization, Circular Action Alliance. Kim's presentation will follow the DEQ presentation. And it's really exciting to be here before you with CAA because it really remarks the beginning of the change and this transition to a modernized recycling system in Oregon with new roles and new shared responsibilities. So thanks for being here. This committee spent a lot of time on Senate Bill 582 back in 2021 when Senator Beyer was chair. We were here also in January legislative days. And I'm really pleased to start this off by saying we are primed for a successful rolling launch to bring that modern, convenient, responsible recycling to Oregon starting on July 1st, 2025, which is just under a year away. Recycling is part of materials management. It's an approach to serving human needs by using and reusing resources most productively and sustainably throughout their life cycles, aiming to minimize the amount of materials involved in all parts of the life cycle. Excuse me. We focus on materials management because many of the impacts to air and water are related to how materials are made and used. The 2050 vision, which you can see the document here, for sustainable materials management is a strategic plan that was adopted by the Environmental Quality Commission in 2012. And that vision, it describes how residents in Oregon produce and use materials. It envisions a future where residents conserve resources, protect the environment, and live well. Traditionally, producers have not been responsible for the products beyond the moment that when consumers purchase them. Product stewardship programs include producers in the life cycle of products and require them to continue to contribute financially to the costs of managing their products. Product stewardship programs are not new to Oregon. The RMA joins existing programs overseen by DEQ and include programs for electronics, paint, unwanted medications, the mattress program that's due to start in '25, and they are similar in design but with customization based on the individual product. Launching all of these programs is an iterative process. The program is designed along with the producer responsibility program and then rolled out over time. The foundation for the Recycling Modernization Act was laid out over many years. In 2017, major disruptions in international recycling markets highlighted some of the underlying issues of the recycling system at home and abroad, and it created opportunities to take a closer look at the challenges that we had all been facing for some time. Some of the issues included dependence on global market conditions, unequal access to recycling collection in rural communities and smaller towns, and inconsistency and confusion over what could be recycled depending on where you worked or where you lived. That was compounded by a growing awareness that our recycling efforts in Oregon could be harming communities around the globe. And in fact, even though the media has been a little quieter about the problems of recycling lately, new data is showing that the RMA is needed now even more than ever. In 2018, DEQ convened the Recycling Steering Committee to discuss the dynamics of recycling in Oregon, to consider ways to create a recycling system that is strong and resilient to changes in supply and demand, to restore and maintain the public trust in the recycling system, and to optimize the environmental benefits of recycling. And so through a thoughtful, measured process, the group identified the problems and provided a solution in the form of a consensus framework for modernizing our system that formed the basis for the legislative concept that became the RMA. Passage of Senate Bill 582 initiated another multi-year intensive inclusive process. The RMA was tailored for Oregon. When fully implemented, the RMA will modernize the recycling system in many ways. It will expand the system, especially in rural areas. All cities with over 4,000 residents will collect a uniform statewide collection list of materials, both at depots and en route or at your curb. New funding will help cover the cost of new equipment and facilities, pay for transport of materials that need to travel more than 50 miles to reach a processor or end markets. For materials that are harder to recycle, the Producer Responsibility Organization will be required to establish a network of collection points, such as return to retail and depots. There will be new culturally responsive educational materials for local governments and their service providers to customize and distribute to residents and businesses. Local governments will receive funding to work with customers to help Oregon recyclers put the right thing in their bin and reduce the contamination at the curb. To make sure the materials are not causing problems here at home or in communities in other parts of the world, the RMA requires that our recycling go to responsible end markets. Those are markets that minimize the impact to the environment, public health, and worker safety. So when we look to the future, which isn't so far away now, we will see recycling services that are easier to access across the state. People in Oregon will be clear about what goes into their bin. The places that turn our recycling into raw materials or feedstocks for new products are handling them responsibly and equitably. And importantly, everyone in Oregon is working together to run this system. Next slide. The RMA is built on the foundation of existing state recycling law, the Opportunity to Recycle Act, and that dates back to 1983. And under this law, local governments with over 4,000 residents must run curbside recycling programs with at least monthly pickup. And also that permitted solid waste disposal sites include a recycling depot where residents can drop off their recyclables. The Opportunity to Recycle law has yielded a patchwork in terms of recycling capacity. So some communities do have what's called alternative programs, and at the county level, there are depots where generators can bring off their waste, but not the consistent system that we are all looking forward to. The RMA was designed to build on top of that foundation, providing improvement and expansion to the existing system. It will incentivize local governments to expand their service both en route and at depots, and will standardize that collection. Yeah, thank you. The Recycling Modernization Act will achieve these outcomes through a shared responsibility model. You can see the participants on the slide. Producers of covered products must join a producer responsibility organization, or PRO, and pay fees for the products they sell into the state. The PRO then channels those fees into system improvements. But that does not entail producers taking over the entire recycling system. The shared responsibility system leaves the local recycling industry intact, and local governments are part of the system through the opportunity to recycle. Local governments will have a key role in providing education and outreach, with funding to support them through the PRO. The companies that sort our materials that we put in the bin will have new permit requirements and must meet standards, as well as send those materials to those responsible markets. The PRO, a nonprofit, will be, has formed, I should say now, and will implement most elements of the RMA. The fees they collect from producers will be distributed to support and expand our system. Local governments will update their service and work with their service providers. And those recycling processors, the ones that receive our stuff that we pile into the bin, will prepare them for market, because that's recycling, right? Not when you put it in the bin, but when it becomes something new. These facilities will get new permits and meet new performance standards. And DEQ will implement and oversee the act with our new Recycling Council, which have two legislator members, right now Senator Finley and Representative McLean, as well as representatives from industry, local government, service providers, community groups, nonprofits, et cetera. So they've been integrally involved for the past 2 years now. Next slide. So focusing on producers for a minute, most individual producers will have 3 simple obligations. They have to register with the PRO, they have to report the amount of the covered products they sell into the state, and pay fees based on those. For most producers, that's the extent of their obligation under the Act. I'm going to turn it to Ariane now to go into some more details. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Salmon and members of the committee. I'm Ariane Sperry, Recycling Program Implementation Lead with DEQ's Product Stewardship Team. Abby mentioned that producers will pay fees for the amount of covered products they sell in Oregon. So under the law, covered products include packaging, printing and writing paper, and food serviceware. Some examples shown in the photo on the left. Several products are exempted in the law. Examples are napkins, paper towels, products used by farms and nurseries, and drug packaging, just a few of them. And an important note that beverage containers covered by Oregon's bottle bill are not subject to the requirements of RMA. While the RMA is primarily a law to make sure that recycling in Oregon works the way it's supposed to, I'd like to highlight some aspects of the RMA that go beyond recycling to advance broader environmental and equity outcomes. Several parts of the law aim to improve social equity. In addition to requiring a living wage for workers in recycling processing facilities, DEQ must conduct a periodic study of equity in the recycling system. Certain producers must evaluate and disclose the environmental impacts of their products. PROs must eco-modulate or adjust fees that individual producers pay relative to the environmental impacts of their products. And the PRO will also provide substantial seed funding for a new waste prevention and reuse program that will help vitalize Oregon's reuse economy, which would yield even more environmental benefits than recycling. So moving on to implementation process or progress. When the RMA passed in 2021, DEQ identified the need to coordinate 2 processes to develop administrative rule language to facilitate RMA implementation and the July 2025 launch date. The first rulemaking focused on topics that needed to be in place to enable the PRO to develop its program plan. One of the central products was the development of the statewide recycling acceptance lists. This was a major undertaking, as the RMA requires these lists to have a strong underlying environmental and economic basis. And DEQ needed to evaluate each individual potential recyclable against multiple criteria laid out in statute. So before the first rulemaking process even began, DEQ collected data from multiple sources, commissioned complex modeling and analysis that considered the full cost to society of whether and how to collect various materials for recycling. DEQ also facilitated a technical work group that reviewed and provided feedback on the analysis, which then fed into the rulemaking process. So in July 2022, DEQ convened the Rulemaking Advisory Committee that included producers, representatives of prospective PROs, local governments, service providers, and community-based organizations. And they met 6 times through April 2023, and then ultimately the Environmental Quality Commission adopted the first set of administrative rules last November. And we are currently in the middle of the second rulemaking process. This process comprised topics that had to be completed prior to the adoption of the PRO program plan and in time for the recycling processors to get their new permits ahead of next summer's program launch. So as before, DEQ led a thorough and collaborative process. There was a 17-member rulemaking advisory committee with representatives, again, from local government service providers, recycling processors, community-based organizations, prospective PROs, and producers. They met 8 times from July 2023 and April 2024, and they considered approximately 20 different rule topics. They had very robust and in-depth discussions and provided a lot of valuable feedback. And DEQ is currently drafting the staff report for the Environmental Quality Commission in November. And so as may be apparent, this is a large undertaking, and I just want to acknowledge all of the interested parties and partners that have really rolled up their sleeves and engaged in the implementation process with us. Hundreds of people at this point have participated in task forces, workshops, webinars, technical work groups, rulemaking advisory committee meetings, the Oregon Recycling System Advisory Council, and we've really worked hard to make the table bigger and invite new voices to the conversation. And a lot of people have said yes to that invitation, so we really appreciate that. And I'm proud to say that together, we are achieving all of the needed milestones, and we are on track for a successful start this summer. I can walk through a few of the highlights here on the slide. In 2022, DEQ hired new staff, launched the Recycling Council, which will provide guidance to both DEQ as well as the PRO for many years to come. Also in 2022, we facilitated the Truth in Labeling Task Force and delivered the report to the legislature. In 2023, we completed the first rulemaking as well as a statewide needs assessment that gave local governments the opportunity to indicate their interest in receiving PRO funding to expand recycling opportunities. We've also completed several required studies during the last few years. And looking forward, I mentioned that we plan to bring our proposed rules for consideration to the Environmental Quality Commission this November. CAA will submit its second draft program plan to DEQ by the end of this month in accordance with the statutory timelines. Recycling processors will get permitted, producers will register with CAA, and then beginning July 1, 2025, producers will begin paying fees. Recycling processors will begin meeting new performance standards for sorting the recycling and making sure that it's all clean. CAA will begin implementing its DEQ-approved program plan. And then Oregon communities, too, will have new obligations beginning July 1, 2025. And I want to say just a little bit about the timeline to begin collecting the materials on the new statewide local government acceptance list. DEQ wants to see as many communities as possible collecting the materials on the new list next summer. And we recognize that some communities may need additional time to make this change in a way that just makes sense for their unique situation. Because we know implementation takes time. And so as we always do, we plan to start with technical assistance to bring communities along. And we've actually just hired several new staff whose job it is to provide technical assistance to communities related to RMA implementation. So next summer, we'll be ushering in a new period of transition, and we anticipate communities will make collection programs on a rolling basis as they're ready. So from DEQ's vantage point, it's really exciting to be here, looking back at all the checked boxes and all that our steady progress has accomplished. All the pieces are coming together, and we're beginning to see Oregon's future recycling system coming into focus. And one of the greatest things about where we are is that we have a prospective PRO to work with. So Kim Holmes is here from Circular Action Alliance to give you more details about their implementation progress.
Great. Thank you very much, Abby and Ariane. Chair Salmon and members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on CAA's progress towards implementing on the RMA. And Senator Lieber, I'm happy to be able to introduce CAA to you. So I welcome your questions at the end here. Okay, so who is Circular Action Alliance? Circular Action Alliance is a 501c3 that was formed a number of years ago by these 20 member companies that you see up here. Many of them are likely familiar. They're some of the world's largest consumer product good companies. CAA has been approved as the single pro already to operate in California, Colorado, and Maryland. And CAA was the only pro to submit an Oregon program plan at the end of March. And we are looking forward to receiving formal approval when our program plan is approved in early 2025. CAA's mission is to deliver harmonized best-in-class compliance services to all producers. So we have a national team that helps coordinate, make the producers' engagement with CAA seamless, while we work within each state to offer very specific and targeted program delivery to meet our obligations within each state. This creates a lot of efficiency from a producer standpoint, having one point of engagement, and then ensuring compliance as EPR in different states continue to grow. I would like to note that our team within Oregon has grown. On July 1st, I was named Executive Director here of CAA, and we will have grown our team to 6 by the end of this month. And I'm happy to say that our staff includes members that are formerly from DEQ, local governments, OBRC, and most recently we'll be having someone who's operated a MRF. So we really have a team that understands the needs of the stakeholders in Oregon and the program.
What's a MRF?
Oh, a MRF. Sorry. I'll try to be mindful of acronyms. The Material Recovery Facility. So where your commingled recycles go and get sorted out. Yes, they will be a key partner for us.
The Smurfs? I don't know. I had all sorts of Smurfs.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
That's where I went.
All right, so here is our program implementation timeline. As you can see, we did submit our first program plan on March 31st, and we did so fully aware that this would be an iterative process and that we would have future program plan submissions, particularly since we needed to undertake some substantial research projects, which we'll talk about. And so we have set this timeline here where we've got our second program plan due just at the end of this week. We'll be doing our third program plan submission in December. We've got, hopefully we'll get full approval of that in early 2025. That leads us up to the producer registration and reporting deadline of March 31st, which really is the last piece of data that we need to finalize fees. That final fee schedule will be published in June. And that's in time for the program to start July 1. We developed this timeline back in May. Well before receiving any feedback from DEQ on our first program plan, and have not had to alter it. We continue to be on track. So let's talk about really one of our primary responsibilities as a producer responsibility organization, which is making sure that producers are ready for this program and to meet their obligations. So to date, recently, as of September 16th, we currently have 1,247 registered producers with CAA who have identified as obligated producers in Oregon. 269 of those are companies that we have tagged as priority producers because they generate more than $2 billion in global revenue. Every day, we continue to increase this number, and we'll have those registered producers listed in our September program plan submission, and then you'll see the ever-growing and continued expanded list in the December program plan submission as well. So in addition to registering producers, we are doing everything we can to prepare them for reporting. So when a producer registers with CAA, which is completely free, and we've had registration open for at least 6 months at this point. We welcome producers to register at any time. Once registered, they have access to a suite of information. CAA is offering ongoing webinars monthly for registered producers. And I was just on a quarterly stakeholder webinar this morning where I presented an update. We had over 400 registrants, over 400 participants, over 900 registrants. So we get a wide and broad audience when we do hold these webinars. We're also putting together a producer reporting guide, which we expect out in the next 4 to 6 weeks, which really walks producers through everything that they need to know. Who is an obligated producer? How do they begin to look at the product reporting categories? What are the obligations within each state? That will all be detailed for them. And then we're also working to develop the producer registration, or the producer reporting portal. And so we hope to have that up in early Q1 2025, well in advance of that March 31st registration deadline. And this will give producers a chance to get into the portal, see all of their product reporting categories, get familiar with the tool, the format, and if they encounter issues, reach out to us and we can provide technical assistance. So I talked about some of the research pieces that were necessary for us to complete in order to finalize our program plan and really to understand what the operating costs of the program are going to be. This is one research effort in particular that is going to help us get towards that December program plan submission. So this is really an unprecedented, a survey, a statewide survey of unprecedented scale to identify the system investments that communities and haulers will need to make that transition to collecting the materials that are going to be on the uniform statewide collection list. And I do want to note, really, we could not have had the level of participation that we did unless we had the support from ORA, the Oregon Refuse and Recycling Association. We worked very closely with the League of Oregon Cities and Association of Oregon Counties. So we very much see the haulers and the local governments as our partners in this process. This really built off of the 2023 needs assessment, which Ariane had alluded to. We had about 241 jurisdictions that participated in that one. In the ORSOP survey, we've had 191 participate. Anecdotally, we've heard that some of the communities opted out from participating because they realized that their systems were quite adequate to make that transition and really didn't need additional investments. So that was affirming that we saw that there was, there is a segment of Oregon that's ready for this, but the ones that aren't, we're prepared to identify those needs and help fund those needs over the course of the program plan period. And so the schedule of investment for how we intend to make those investments in communities will be in our December program plan. And here's just an example of some of the equipment that communities will be eligible for to help them make that transition. So we will very much make sure that communities are financially supported for this. And I do want to note here that the communities that will be at the top of our priority funding list, and this is in statute, so this was your guys' priority, was that the communities that aren't yet operating curbside programs that are over 4,000, the ones that are not meeting the opportunity to recycle expectation, those will be the top priorities for funding. So the intent is that we will really begin to close the performance gap that exists there. And many of those communities are in the more rural parts of our state. In addition to providing funding, CAA is also putting together a comprehensive suite of education and outreach tools for local governments and service providers to work with to prepare both residents and commercial customers for the transition. And so you'll see we're going to have customizable tools that each local government and hauler can produce. We'll also be coordinating a statewide education and marketing campaign. So in addition to providing financial support, we will also make sure that they have the support to properly educate those in the state. So just kind of a recap here, what does happen on July 1? Both Ariane and Abby have talked about how this is very much kind of a rollout, right? These types of transitions take some time. But what does happen July 1, and this is really key because this is how we modernize the system, the money starts flowing into communities. And so those first priority communities begin to receive system expansion funding. Communities that transport commingled recyclables over 50 miles, they become eligible for transportation reimbursement. This is another way that we can really look at equity between rural and urban communities and even out the situation there. Permitted facilities, I'm gonna throw one more acronym out there. The MRFs are now called CRPFs, commingle recycle processing facilities. We'll bring a dictionary next time of acronyms. They become eligible to receive the processor commodity risk fee and the contamination management fee. And this is how the investments will be made by MRFs to improve how they sort and what they can sort. And we can really begin to grow our recycling system once these investments can be made. And so the money begins to flow into this system, and any transition service really will be led by local governments when they feel their communities are ready, and we'll be there to support them. Just very quickly, program costs and fees. So once that ORSOP survey is in, it will better understand really what those upfront system investments will be, and we can get a much more clear picture of what those costs will be for the December program plan. We don't yet have those. So what you're going to see in the September plan, initially we published a more narrow category of products with some estimated fees in there. We're expanding that product category list to 16 product categories, and we're offering a high, medium, and low range on pricing. And the way that we've based the high, medium, and low is on reported supply. So we really wanted to underscore to producers, when you accurately and completely report your supply, you're going to see lower fees, because we can calculate those costs over larger reported volumes. And so we wanted this to be kind of a way to explain that to producers. So we'll continue to refine these as we work towards that July 1 start date, and continue to communicate that to producers. So I will just leave you with the message that CAA is ready to implement on the initially proposed timeline, and we are confident that our producers will be equally ready as well. So I look forward to any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you so much for the presentation. I know I have a few, because I had a few from yesterday, but I didn't want to ask, well, they weren't taking questions during yesterday, but I wasn't going to ask mine there anyway, so, but please.
No, I just have I have a few questions on the fees and how they are calculated. You gave us a little bit of a slide, the projected draft material fees I see in here, and you're going to have 16 different categories. Are they self-reported by the producer?
They are, yeah. So we're going to have 60 different product categories in total that you'll see in the December plan. And the reason that we have very detailed product category reporting is because there's no cross-subsidization of the management of materials. So every fee for each fee category truly reflects the costs of managing that material in the system. So that's why we have it broken out into such detail. But yes, it is self-reported data.
And when the costs of that go down, will you be passing those reductions on to the producers?
Yes.
I mean, in theory, like that's the incentive, right? In theory, hopefully, if you're recycling enough and have, like, your costs should go down.
Yes. So every year, our costs will be reassessed based on reporting.
Okay.
So every year, they will be recalculated and projected. We do anticipate, because we have some of those upfront system investments in this first program plan period, those will largely be completed. And so by the time of the next program plan, that will largely fall out, right? Unless there are communities that, we identify have some new needs at that time. So yes, costs will continue to come down over time is our expectation.
And so is that when you talked about eco-modulating, is that if I'm a producer and I decide to use a more eco-friendly / easier to recycle packaging, do I get the benefit of that because I'm not paying as high a fee because it's recyclable or like cheaper to recycle? Is that a true statement?
Yes. And so the way that Oregon is approaching eco-modulation is we are a bit unique in that we are basing it largely on LCA, life cycle assessments and impacts. And so if you have a product that can demonstrate an environmental benefit or improvement, your fee reduction will be based on that. So we are in the process of still developing and finalizing the eco-modulation framework, but you'll see we're going to have bonus A and bonus B. Bonus A will be fully described in this program plan submission, and bonus B will, the top level framework of bonus B will be discussed, and then we'll have more details in the December plan on that.
And who am I proving that to? You or DEQ? Like who decides whether I've proven that?
Yep, so the LCAs will be submitted to us by producers. There is also a requirement that the top 25 producers produce LCAs for 1% of the SKUs. So there is a requirement for some of them, and then it's optional for others who pursue the eco-modulation. Those LCAs will come to us. We will review them and figure out which tier of bonus they would fall into based on that calculated impact reduction.
And then do you have an estimate on how many fees you think you're going to receive in the first year? Like what's the
Oh, you just answered.
What's the world?
Answered one of my questions.
Oh, well, I was copying off your page.
So we are working very hard to make sure that we have as many obligated producers registered as we can.
Okay.
The benefit of kind of being the first in the state, but not the first in the world, right? Many of these producers, they're used to this. They have EPR in Canada, Europe, Russia.
Yeah.
The EPR for packaging
Russia.
exists everywhere. Yeah. The U.S. is a little bit late to the game on it.
What?
So,
Oh, sorry. No.
so this is not something that's entirely unfamiliar to them.
Okay.
We can look at other provinces, though, and we know that they don't have 100% registration at the offset necessarily. But there is a requirement that if you are an obligated producer and you didn't register with us that first year, you have to go back. You have to effectively true up to get into the system for future years. So there's no free riders.
And now, how much do you think you're going to pull in the first year?
Oh, how many dollars are we going to pull in the
dollars?
first year?
How big is this that we're thinking? Like, what's your estimate?
Okay, so we have estimated in the first program plan, and these were very preliminary numbers, and these were based entirely largely on the projections of the 2023 needs assessment.
Okay.
So we estimated 226 to 292 million for the first year. We are seeing that cost estimate come down as we start going through the results of the ORSOP survey. So we will have that estimate completed for the December plan.
What's the percentage of that goes back out to do the system versus how much percentage do you take off the top for administration?
So I think our split is 70%, 30%. I think I will have to confirm.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for doing this. No, sorry.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
A few things.
Sorry. That is direct and indirect costs, and I will have to figure out what the indirect costs. I don't think administrative is the whole entirety of the indirect
seems high.
costs. Yes.
I'm not going to lie to you. I think that's high. So, yeah.
Those are the direct and indirect.
Okay.
So I will have to figure out what the indirects are and get back to you.
Got it.
Great. Thank you so much. I will say, one thing I will say, I was on a tour recently, and it pulled a lot of people from multi-states, and there was I will just say from a southern state who's been involved and an advocate in this work around EPR. They really praised the transparency of having your plan was all out there for everyone to see. And they were like, that's just unheard of at this level, and how quickly it came forward. So they wanted to pass on that praise, and I wanted to give that publicly. And I also wanted to say how much I really appreciate the collaborative nature here, because there's been this is new. This is new and exciting. I mean, probably more exciting to some than others, but it is something that is new, and it's creating some anxiety, and it's creating some uncertainty, and sometimes that doesn't breed for positivity in a legislative arena. So I think it's important that, that you've come together, you've addressed some concerns. Hey, I think we need to address this. And you both were like, let's get to the table and figure this out. And I really wanted to just publicly say that, how much I appreciate you doing that, because you realized and you addressed that there was some real concerns out there that you wanted to address. And I was curious on a couple of things. One is, and I wrote it, so both, so will there be measurable goals or like key metrics you talked about? Is that performance standards? Will there be key performance measures, KPMs that are derived from this that we'll be able to follow and be able to see? I have multiple questions, but I'll just, that first.
Yep, absolutely. So there are a few areas that we are required to report on based in statute and regulation. There are certain recycling targets that we need to demonstrate for glass. We have to show progress towards our plastics recycling rate goal. And then there will be many other metrics that we're capturing and reporting out on, which are detailed in the program plan. But I'll give you an example, kind of down to how are we engaging with, communities across Oregon and communities that have speakers of other languages, right? We should be able to track that by how many times certain languages are downloaded and from which communities. So we can really make sure that we are meeting our equity goals, our performance goals, and then certainly our cost goals. All of the costs will be, fully transparent and reported as well. And we'll be reporting on the responsible end market pieces as well.
Great. Thank you. And I wanted to there's a comment and then a question. So the comment is that one time I was talking to a colleague and the colleague said to me, it seems like 582 puts a lot of emphasis on reduce and reuse and not as much on recycling. Now, for me personally, I was like, what's the problem? And so, but I think it does. It's addressed or there's highlighted in a lawsuit most recently from the state of California to Exxon Mobil, who is the world's leading producer of single-use plastics. They were falsifying what exactly they were doing with their recycling, which is why I think 582 and having the goals and having the measurable and having the accountability is really key and important to this discussion. So, and I also really appreciate that our system looks at what are we doing for talking about refillable? What are we doing to talk about reusable? Because we know that is the punch that reduced the waste as well. So I thank you for that. My comment or my question comment is one of the comments that was made to me by another colleague that said, I'm not sure that I'm going to feel the incentive to drive my pickle jar to a depot and drop it off if I live in a rural area. I'm not sure that I'm going to feel the incentive to do so. I'm probably going to throw it in the trash. My question is I've made this comment and I really I'm curious about this. As we talk about the growing costs to consumers, to Oregonians, that if we did nothing with 582, it was us that were going to start feeling that, right? Wasn't the producers of the waste, which is why we are where we are. Isn't it true that we could see reduction if the more you recycle or the more we have reduce and reuse and such, that you could reduce the size of your trash can and save yourself money? Is there anything that's built into either the information about that, the education, or into some sort of criteria or sideboard that says, look, here's ways, Oregonians, that you can save? I'm just curious, because sometimes they are trying to decide that gas trip taking their pickle jar or what. And I really want them to really see there's value in reducing how much space you use in your can, your garbage can. Does that make sense?
So
Yeah.
a lot there, Chair
know.
Salmon.
Surprise.
I guess I will maybe just start and then maybe Kim or Aaron have more to add. But we do have pay as you throw here in Oregon. So yes, if you put less in your garbage can, you can get a smaller can. And I'm curious, we're still towards the beginning of all the educational materials. So that's something certainly that we can look at as we kind of work through that. As far as the effort to take your material, there will be in most places, many places, more things that you can dispose of at the curb. So some people have to bring most of their things to a depot. So we should be seeing more curbside recycling of many things. So I think actually it'll be a double win. You don't have to drive it and it's curbside and your garbage goes down. Not all at once, but that's sort of how things will go, and we will see the program evolve to where does it make the most sense to collect the materials, which things are best at the curb and which things are best at depots. Some things just don't belong mixed up at the curbside. It creates problems for sorting at the sorting facilities. So some things are better kept separate, and some things can well move in, as are MRFs, CPRFs, whatever you want to call them. As they modernize, they should be able to be better handling our sorting, and so make it easier to put things. So I don't know if you wanted to add to any of that.
Yep, no, I think that was a great setup. So in our first program plan, you'll actually see we have stated that our intent is we'll be on-ramping new materials over the course of the program plan. So some of those materials that DEQ has said, Pro, go ahead and manage through collection points. We do believe that with the right technologies, modernizing the system, that we can move more materials into the curb programs and increase convenience for residents. For those materials that do need to stay separate and can't make it into that commingled mix, it's our hope that we are conveniently locating those locations with co-locating them with other businesses or places that they would be taking trips and traveling to.
Bottle drops.
Yep, retail locations, and yep, we are exploring all options, yep, to make sure that there is that convenience. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Senator Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really stunned with how comprehensive and ambitious this whole project is as I see it all laid out. Abby, can you easily bring your PowerPoint back up? If not, it's not a big deal. But if you can, I'd like to go to slide 10.
Oh, I cannot, sorry, that's as far as I can go.
Is it-
Slide 10. This one?
No,
One more.
One more. Bing.
Yeah. The exempted, now this is the RMA, this isn't what you did. The exempted products, I'm not going to lay awake night worrying about all those little orange pharmaceutical pill bottles. But in rural Oregon, my part of the state and others, the volume of single-use plastics is colossal. And, it really came out, it was like catastrophic during our illegal cannabis crisis, and that's not so much anymore. But as particularly single-use irrigation pipe that's not designed to last more than a season, there is so much of it out there, and some of it disintegrates and becomes soil quality issues and that kind of thing. So I'm sure all of these exceptions are the product of different negotiations and market conditions and all of that. But I'm sure hoping we can move towards incorporating especially single-use irrigation pipe. And then the nursery pots drive me kind of crazy, and I don't understand. That looks like such a reusable product. Some of it's clearly single-use. So in conjunction with what you're doing, what can we do to reduce exemptions of some of the really problematic stuff?
Chair Solomon, Senator Golden, also a lot there. Yeah, their irrigation tape, Senator Finley has brought it up
warming
more
his
than
heart.
once.
I'm
So,
channeling.
yes, I
you're
feel it.
channeling
And that is not packaging, so it's clearly not part of this. Certainly something we could talk about for an extended producer responsibility model. So love to chat about that more. I don't think it would fit into this, this program, but like I had said at the very beginning, we do have programs for other materials. So there are ways to collect or manage however is appropriate for that material.
Well, is part of the ongoing reviews of this program going to be asking these kinds of questions, or does it have to be a totally separate initiative?
Senator Golden, my kind of gut response is I think it would, for particularly the irrigation line, I think that would be separate. Some of the other exempted materials were purely exempted, and correct me wrong if I'm wrong, but not all nursery materials are exempted, but the ones that are used on farm in this, inside the system, the stuff that goes to when you buy your geranium, that I believe is not exempted.
I'm
So it's
looking at
not
a
all
huge, in
exempted.
this, in your picture, in the lower right, it looks like my yard, that stash of black plastic pots that the nursery industry uses, basically, which is a container, right?
And that is not exempted. You kick me if I'm wrong.
So what are we looking at in
The
this
packaging
picture,
that
Mike?
is used on farms and on nurseries, yes, is exempted. So there's an exemption in the statute for if it's on farm. So I think that the photo might be a little misleading because this is also a product that you can purchase retail, and then it is.
You mean if I purchase it, I'm not a farmer, I'm exempt? But
You're
if a
not
farmer
exempt.
does,
You're covered. If your pot in your backyard is a covered product.
It's how the product is
and a
used.
farmer who uses it is exempt? I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble tracking
Yeah,
this.
we should probably update the photo.
That
Yeah.
sounds like, we can just come back with maybe a little explanation that can be sent to Beth, and Beth can provide that to everyone. Does that sounds
I
great.
got a thing about these
Okay.
black pots.
I hear it. And I'm thinking you should put it on Buy Nothing on Facebook, and your neighbors will love it. So with that, I think we have our questions. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that. We're going to close this little hearing on the EPR program, and we're going to open up a informational hearing on reusable bottles. It's very exciting.